Okay, speaking of recordings, in the green meetings folder and on YouTube, I started changing the way that the videos are labeled. So right now, I'm doing it, for example, so it kind of looks like this. It's week 1, day 2, morning or afternoon. It's a little bit easier to understand versus in trying to put all the numbers and too long of a name. So I'm trying to shorten it so it's a little easier to understand. So W for week, D for day, and then morning or afternoon, depending if I needed to add more information. And also in the descriptions, I think the one with Mrs. Silva, I added, oh, Mrs. Silva was joined us for this day in case you need some help looking for your reading materials for next week. Okay, but first of all, again, happy Friday. We made it, so we did one full week, and I'm very proud of all of you. All of you have been very responsible and proactive, and you've been either contacting me, through chat, email, Schoology, Remind, through your assignments too. That's the way we communicate. So bravo, round of applause. Very happy and proud of all of you. So this is barely the first week, so I have a lot of expectations for the next few weeks, but I know that now that all of you are capable of it. The pace, like the speed that we're going, will pick up a little bit more. This week was like, first week, first day of school, but we're going to continue a little bit faster so we can cover all the information that normally takes us fall and spring to cover. So we're going to go ahead and continue working. If you scroll through your week 1 folder, usually that's what we do in, maybe half a semester or 9 weeks. But for our class in summer, that's what we did in 1 week. But we did it all, and I'm really glad that if you had questions, you asked, and you're asking really good questions. For today, what we're going to do is we're going to go over a list of literary devices, things that are present that help us to analyze and better understand a lot of different stories. In this case, we're going to talk about the lottery. We did finish it yesterday, and so now that we understand that story, we're going to go back and kind of pull it apart into these different categories and pieces using these literary devices, these skills, and these other ways and things that the story has within it. It's contained in the story. Then we're going to, of course, have time for questions if you have. I'm also going to show you the last couple of things that we have available to us in Schoology. One of them is the assessment that I told you about yesterday, but I want to show it to you so that way you have an idea of how it works. It might look a little different for me because I see like the teacher vision or the teacher point of view for it, but in your Schoology, it'll look different. What else are we going to do? And I'll go ahead and recap, and so that way we can get ready for next week. And just to let you know, so for this weekend, you have homework, which is the assessment. It's due Sunday at midnight. But other than that, you did a lot of work this week. So other than that, you really don't have homework, just to prepare and, kind of rest and make sure that you're ready to go when we start on Monday. So let me make sure I have the right window open. This would be a good time while I'm working to open up your version of the lottery. If you printed it, or if you have your PDF document, now would be a good time to open it. So that way we can discuss some of the things. I'm going to have the literary devices open on my end, but I wanted to make sure that you can see what we're talking about. Okay, almost ready. Now I can share. Okay, sharing. Great. So one of the things that is a literary device in the lottery is theme. So the theme, the definition is the subject of a talk, a piece of writing like this short story, a person's thoughts. Later we'll see there is also theme that is possible in poetry or an exhibition. So it's also the topic. What is this thing, this writing in this example, what is it about? And so here the answer is tradition should not always be blindly followed. So that means that just because something is, we've always done it this way, or, it's part of our family, it's part of our history, we just continue, we need to take a pause and say, well, is this the right thing to do? Do I like this? Do I agree with this thing? And for example, in the lottery, this is a very violent tradition that they have in this village, but nobody is saying, wait a minute, let's stop. They talk about the other villages where some of the other towns nearby have stopped it, and the current villagers that we read about, they're like, oh no, they're crazy. They don't know what they're doing. So they keep continuing with this cycle. And always when we ask why, we have to answer with our evidence. So here our evidence is from start to finish of the story. So we have people saying, oh, the other town stopped, but they're crazy. They continue with the ritual. They keep the box. They get the box out. Everybody comes to the center of the square, and they pick the name. Like throughout the whole process of this lottery, they are continuing to show this theme that they are blindly, they're not watching, they're not looking or thinking, they're following this tradition. And so what happens to this story because of this theme? What is the effect? Excuse me. So the theme makes the story more intricate. So there's a lot more details and it's more interesting to read. We can read a story about people having a party in a square. You're like, oh, okay, that's very nice, but it's not as interesting. So the more you read, so as we continue page by page, the more you see the theme. This theme allows the reader to see more into what the author's purpose. In English 1, we talk about author's purpose. Why is the author writing this particular piece? If it's a story, a biography, a poem, a blog, why is an author writing this? Do they want to share information? Do they want to, well, let me go into that pie. So some of you had me last semester, so we had the idea of pie. So you want to persuade, to inform, or to entertain. So authors have P-I-E, like pie, like cherry pie, apple pie. So P-I-E. So in this case, what is the author's purpose? And what does the author want the reader to see after they read the story? The story showed how traditions can be blindly followed and how even though you follow this tradition, it still does not end well. So it ends, unfortunately, in someone about to die. Okay, so this theme is going to come up a lot more. So when we talk about a poem or another story we're going to read later in this session, when we talk about theme, now you can think back to this story of the lottery. And you can think, oh, I remember the theme of that. How are they similar? And usually having a past example helps you to understand something that you're doing right now. We also have symbolism. So the definition of symbolism means that there are symbolic, those are significance for a meaning in natural objects or facts, or sometimes even in events. So in this story, the black box where everybody puts a blank piece of paper and only one black spot paper, and everybody reaches in and takes one out, that is the big symbol of this entire story. So we have evidence in the story. We put a direct example from the story. Mr. Summers spoke frequently to the villagers about making a new box, but no one liked to upset even as much tradition as was represented. So that's a good key word. So symbols represent something, represented by the black box. So what is the effect? So symbolism in the story makes the story more developed, and it allows the author to convey, to share ideas through symbols rather than just saying, oh, the box is important. No, they give us the symbol and showing how important it is. They describe the box, Obviously, people take care of the box. When they bring it out, they don't just drop it on the floor. No, they have to get this extra little chair, this stool, and then they put the box on top. Through symbols rather than just saying what they want to be, symbolism gives the story more meaning. So people keep caring for this box and they keep it even though it's not the greatest thing. So the appearance of the box is not that great, which is very similar to the tradition. They keep holding on to this tradition of this lottery, but it's not a good thing. So that's a symbol for the story, is this box. Let me see if we have any questions real quick. Stop sharing. Okay. Okay, here we go. We also have imagery. So the author does a really good job of setting our image in our head. So their description of the setting is pretty descriptive. They say it was a sunny morning. The flowers were blossoming profusely. So it's not just like, oh, look, there's a flower. It's like profusely blooming. The grass was richly green. Can't remember what else it was, but for sure, at the very first paragraph, there's a lot of imagery. You can really see this place in your mind. So the definition of imagery: visually descriptive or figurative language. So figurative language is when we get similes, metaphors, and we're going to talk about those more when we get to poetry, but we can start seeing what those things are. So the answer, what is our image? It's also our symbol. So it's the black box. And our evidence is the black box grew shabbier each year. So when something is shabby, it doesn't look new or clean. Maybe some people lately, because of social distancing, they have not gotten their hair cut. So maybe their hair looks a little shabby. It's kind of long here and short there, and it's growing in different directions. So their hair might look a little shabby. But by now it was no longer completely black, but splintered badly along one side to show the original wood color. And in some places, faded or stained. So the color doesn't look great, the texture, the overall appearance of this box is not great. So this is an image that we can see. If I told you, okay, everyone, we're going to draw this box, you would have a pretty good idea of what to do, what to draw. So the effects are, by the author giving a very descriptive explanation, and it allows us to visualize a very important object in the story. Without the box, where are they going to keep all of these papers, and they continue to hold on to this box year after year? The box is very important, and by the author taking time to describe it, it shows that it's something to pay attention to. And this is a good point when they say taking time, because this is a short story. We only have a little bit more than 8 pages. So the author takes a solid amount of time, let's say like 10% of this story, to talk about a box. But because it takes up that time, now we know, okay, this is important. So they give us those images so it stands out more. That one. Okay, we'll do this one. Because they put a lot of them here, and I only want to make sure we get a couple really well, and then later we will add more. So irony's definition: the expression of one's meaning or their significance by using language that normally signifies the opposite, usually or typically for humorous or emphatic effect. So emphatic effect means emphasis. So for example, when I'm using my hands a lot or you get louder, that's an emphasis. So you really want to, like we do in our writing and reading, to highlight, circle, underline. You're emphasizing information. So the answer is the lottery, the process itself. Our evidence is Bill Hutchinson went over to his wife and forced the slip of paper out of her hand. It isn't fair, she said. So this effect, it's true, the whole story is irony from the title to the winner. So you think, okay, the lottery, this is a great opportunity. I can't wait to win. And then by the time we get to the end, you think, oh, no, 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 I don't want to participate. No, nobody wins. Really, they lose. So that's the opposite. So the significance of a lottery versus the outcome of the story, that's where they create the irony. When readers read the title, they'd assume that the story is about fortune and wealth. But once you read and complete the story, they see the true irony of it all. By using irony, Shirley Jackson, our author, misleads the readers. So we think we're going this way, okay, all of a sudden we turn. So you can imagine if you're in a car, you think you're going down a street, all of a sudden you make a U-turn, you make a really drastic shift. The author misleads the readers and makes them assume before reading a completely different meaning. And that's what we do. So for example, when we are writing essays or paragraphs and we need a title, sometimes we want the title to explain what's going to happen. And in this case, it does do that job. So it does explain what happens. There is a lottery, but it's not the type of lottery that we are expecting. So that's a very interesting twist with the irony. They're using that expression of our idea of lottery versus what the actual ending is. So with this, it gives a really big emphasis because they're so opposite. They contrast so much. Before I forget, this presentation is available to you in Schoology. I'll show you, it's in your week 1 folder, and I'll show you before we end class. But you do have this available. So if you have different notes or anything else you want to add to this, you have that available to you. So you can see it later when we talk about other things. Okay, summary. And summaries come up a lot when we have reading. So I may ask, okay, summarize this reading. So think about right now in your head as a challenge to yourself. If I had to summarize this story, what would I say? But it would be a brief statement or account of the main points of something. So this is where we get just the bones or the skeleton. We don't want the entire thing. We just want enough information to be interesting and to share something like the theme, the message. So in this case, this would be a good summary of this story. Now, while I'm going to read this, or while you're reading this on your screen, think about, did this happen? Was this important? Yes, yes, yes. Did they cover information from beginning, middle, and end? So all the way down. Excuse me. So the summary for the lottery. A town participates in a yearly event called the lottery. Yep, well, that's true. In the lottery, all the villagers put their names in a box, and whoever's name is called as the winner gets the prize of being the sacrifice for the crops. So in this case, they give us a good idea that they are doing this so they will have a lot of food, that when they farm, a lot of things will grow. That's when they make the idea, I think one of the characters said something about you have a lottery and then the corn comes in. The winner is stoned by the community, so that's why they have those stones, they throw them at the person, and is known as the year's sacrifice to the corn. So in this case, evidence is throughout, they put NA, but that's not, I disagree with that. It's throughout the whole thing. And I think the effect could also be, now I have an idea about the story. So if somebody said, hey friend, what did you do today in class? You could say, oh, I read a story called The Lottery. And they say, well, what's it about? You give them a summary, and that way they have a better idea of the main points of this story. Something you might think about is maybe you want your friend to read this. So you might change your summary. So it might be like a hashtag no spoilers summary. You don't want to tell them about the ending. You can say, oh, it's about a town. They participate in a tradition every year. They always use this box. It's very important to them, and they put their names inside, and at the end, there's a winner of the lottery. You can say that, and that way you don't spoil the ending, and they have the opportunity to have the same experience that you did when you read this. So you can also think of the author's purpose, like who are you sharing with? What is the purpose of you sharing this summary? If it's for something like class where everybody has read the same story, you can go ahead. You can put the ending in there because you're not going to spoil it for someone. You're not going to reveal it by accident. The next one, personification. So of course we have person and then ification, which means like a process. But person has to do with having to do with humans. So in this case, definition, the attribution of a personal nature or human characteristics to something that is not human. So giving the characters and properties of something that is alive to something that is not alive. It is not animate. Or the representation of an abstract quality in human form. So if you have an abstract quality, for example, like freedom or justice, you're like, okay, that sounds like a really good idea, but how do you make it into something, an object or a human person? So for example, a lot of things in the law for legal and lawyers and policy, they usually show the lady where she's holding the scale and they're balanced, but they're making her the lady justice. So we have this idea of justice, but they are personifying her, where she's blind, as an object. In this case with the story, they are giving little slips of paper. So if you have a blank piece of paper, that means that you have your life back. You are able to continue. Whereas when the paper with the dot, that means you are the one who is marked. So you are marked for this sacrifice. Whereas the other people are unmarked and they're free to go. Evidence. Mr. Graves had selected the 5 slips and put them in the box. And he dropped all the papers but those onto the ground where the breeze caught them and lifted them off. Now, I'm not sure if a lot of you noticed that they do talk about the papers blowing away. So their chance at winning the lottery is now gone away for another year. So every year, everybody has that name in the box, that danger of being the sacrifice. But in this case, they personify it by the lives escaping with the pieces of paper, and they get to go on with their lives again. So the effect, personification amplifies. So when you amplify something, like if you're listening to music and you put it into an amplifier, it amplifies, it makes it bigger. Personification amplifies the reader's ability to relate to the situation. So how do you interact? How are you seeing it? How are you receiving information? And allows the reader to visualize, to see what is going on. The effect on the story was to help the reader visualize and relate. So you can imagine that. So you can have a piece of paper and then you can imagine putting it in a box. That's something that we've done in class. So some of us, we've done like little raffles or lotteries in class. You can imagine picking it up. There's a lot of tension when you personify this, when you think, okay, you can't look until they tell you. So you're waiting, and then finally you open it up. And if it's, well, mine has paper, so mine has writing. But if it's blank, you're like, oh, okay, I'm safe. But if you don't, you have that spot, that dot, you know that this is maybe your last day because you or your family are going to be in trouble. I don't want to talk about that. Okay, I do want to get to this one. Oh no, just kidding. Just a couple more. So foreshadowing. So fore means ahead. So like your forehead is in the front. When you're in the foreground of something, you're in the front. And shadowing is you can kind of see it coming. The definition, to be a warning or indication of something in the future. So if in this case, a future event. And the foreshadowing device in this story are the stones. So at first we are introduced to the stones like, oh, this little boy is out of school and he's picking up rocks, which you think, okay, it can be a little dangerous, but no, it's fine. But then later we see what the stones are used for. So Bobby Martin had already stuffed his pockets full of stones, and the other boys soon followed his example, selecting the smoothest, roundest ones. Eventually, they made a great pile of stones in the corner of the square and guarded it against the raids of other boys. The children had stones already, and someone gave little Davy Hutchinson a few pebbles. So in this case, we have these different children where they're putting a bunch of stones in their pockets. So that means they've taken time, they're looking for stones, they're being very selective. It's not just any stone, they want ones really smooth, really round. So there's a lot of action and intention in this foreshadowing. Oh, they also made a great pile. So unfortunately for the sacrifice, they're going to be hit with a lot of rocks, which sounds terrible, but whew. So that means that this village has come together for the purpose of let's collect these stones, and we all are aware of what the purpose of these stones are. When we read it at the beginning, we don't, but because there is time and attention that the author takes to tell us about these stones, where they're finding the stones, who is collecting the stones, what type of stones, and also how they're protecting, they're guarding this pile of stones, this collection. And so the effect, foreshadowing hints to the future events, and the author, Shirley Jackson, foreshadowed by showing the children gathering the stones in the beginning, and then showing at the end the children stoning the winner. It affects the story by giving the reader hints before the actual stoning occurred. So she's showing us that these children have the stones, and then we get into details of the story, and at the end, everybody has these stones as well. So it showed a future event in this case. Okay, so the climax. So if you imagine the plot, so we have the action that's coming, and this climax is the highest point. So the definition, the most intense, exciting, or important point of something. So in this case, the something is our story, a culmination, the turning point. So if you have your rising action, your plot, it's going, and it's really tense, and then it goes down after there. So it's the most intense, the highest point of tension. And of course, it's when we find out that Tessie Hutchinson is the winner of the lottery. And because we get to the point where, oh, look at this nice place, this village. It sounds so nice with the flowers and the grass. And now we know people are gathering together. And now we're getting more information about the history of the box and the lottery. Now we know how the lottery works, kind of slowly working up this way. And finally, we get some tension. It starts to build and to grow. We find out that Bill Hutchinson is the one who gets a paper. So now that we know his family is the smaller group that's selected, it intensifies a little bit more. And then finally, within his family, they draw the slips of paper again. And then, bam, now we know who the winner is. And then we find out what her prize is. So that is that highest point of tension. And after that, we have a lot more information and we know how the story ends. The effect, after Tessie was chosen, it showed how a small community could turn for traditions. So when she arrived, she was like, oh, I had to do my dishes. Nice to see you. Good morning. But as soon as she is the chosen one, the entire community turns her. They kind of they turn their back on her. So she goes from becoming a community member to a target right away. So that's a really big shift. And when they say here in the definition, a turning point. So after this point, nothing will be the same. And in this case, that is very true. So there are a couple other cards in here. So go ahead and take a look at them. They are still interesting, but I wanted to make sure I covered those few. And again, we'll talk about it later. This is a website called Prezi. It's kind of like PowerPoint, but they do a lot of the animations for you. But you can find this in your week 1 folder, kind of towards the bottom. But now we have this little group, this little cluster of the, which is the PDF, the audio version. We have our discussion. I already had one person have put a point that they were interested in talking about. I replied. And of course, again, if you want to reply or you have a question or you thought this part was cool or confusing, whatever, you can put it in there in case you don't feel like talking about it right now over audio or video. And then I also put this link. So this link takes you to this presentation here. And I do suggest you go through it. Like I said, these types of words like personification, author's purpose, point of view, climax, foreshadowing, all of those words are going to come up later for us in our session. Okay. So I've already seen that some people have submitted work for the silent reading materials for next week, which is excellent. Some of the book covers look really interesting, so I'm a little jealous I won't get to read them. Also, your end of the week vlog, remember it can be an actual video. You take it with your phone, your computer, or if you're feeling a little shy, I know, I understand, you can also just take the audio recording as well. Let me see if I can go ahead and show you. I'll do that later. So you do have the option in Schoology to use the microphone, or you have a voice app in your computer, and most phones have a voice recording app as well. Okay. I still have time. I wanted to show you. So right now, these star writing practice quizzes are here. So there are 2 parts. So part 1 is an essay. I hope I can show you a preview. So when you click on it, it's going to look like this. The instructions are really basic, but it's just this is an essay practice exam for the STAR test, and it is due Sunday at 11:59 p.m. If you finish today, that's perfectly fine, but you do have a lot of other work that is due today at midnight. When you're ready, start your new attempt. So what you have to do is we have a quotation here. This is just like your STAR exam. And you have to, I know we didn't get to take our STAR exam this year, just nuts, but this is a just practice just to see what they look like, to remember what they look like. So other people may be there to help us, teach us, and guide us along our path. But the lesson to be learned is always ours. So we don't know who said this, but we know that they did say it at some point. So that's just an idea. It's a nice quote for us to have. But this here is your question in bold. We talked about teamwork and stuff this week, so this is part of that. Is it better for people to learn from others, or is it better for people to learn on their own? So that's the question you have to answer with an essay. Here, write an essay explaining the best way to learn things. So remember, you have to say either yes, it is better to learn from others, or no, it's better to learn on your own. You have to answer that completely. So write this essay. You have the option to write it by hand, like some of you are doing with your vocabulary. That's fine. Please make sure it's nice letters so I can see it in good light. And if you want to create the Word document, you can do that, and you can copy and paste it in here. So that will be part 1. Part 2. Part 2 is a multiple choice quiz. show you. There's an attached PDF, so that's the thing that you read, but I also put the same thing in the multiple choice. So for this thing, you're going to start on page 10 because the pages before that are about the essay. So you can ignore that. I already gave you that information. So start on page 10. I may just post show instructions. I may have to fix this real quick, but I'll do that right after class. So you have a question, here are the answers, and then you, like just like your exam, you choose which option it is. But there is a PDF. Leave. Go ahead and do that right now before I forget. I do not want to forget you guys in trouble during the weekend. Save. Okay, preview. Okay, here it is. So when you click on your quiz, you can download this and you can look at it so you have an opportunity to see what you feel your answers are. So let's go to page 10. And here you go. So you read the selection, you choose the best answer to each question, and you answer on your answer document. So in this case, because everything's electronic, your answer document will be this. Same thing that is here for question number 1, all the way at the bottom. Thomas needs to add a sentence. It's right here. Thomas needs to add a sentence. So I made sure that you had this question and the options here, and then you select which one you think it is. I think of anything else I need to show you in Schoology right now. Well, as you can kind of see, you can't see the week 2, week 3, week 4, but we're going to have folders for those. So everything is going to be organized by the week. And like I told you before, we're moving quickly because it's summer school and we have all day to go through everything. We have a lot. So this normally would be 9 weeks, maybe a few weeks at least, but this has just been 1 week for us. And a lot of it was introduction, like our scavenger hunt, our vocabulary introduction. So next week we'll just go straight into vocabulary. We don't need an orientation. We'll have a discussion and we'll have content. Okay, I think that's about it. Let me double check my list. Great. I'll go ahead and stop recording right now while we're on a little pause.